Helena, the Devil's Daughter, Germany 2024. In the city of Munich, Germany, in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the clock struck 9 p.m. Thomas Berger was sitting in a cafe near his home with a group of friends. It was rare for Thomas to gather with his friends, so he had invited them for a night out. He had spent years working in Switzerland before returning to settle in Germany 8 months ago. At 9:30 p.m., Thomas received a phone call from his sister-in-law, Helena Fischer. Voice was urgent. She told him he needed to come immediately because his younger brother, Nikolas Berger, was seriously ill. Concerned, Thomas quickly left with one of his friends who had a car, and within 10 minutes, they arrived at the house. Residence was a family villa. Thomas lived on the second floor, while his brother Nikolas lived on the first floor with his wife and children. He knocked on the door and Helena opened it. Without wasting a second, he rushed inside to check on his brother, while his friends waited outside for any updates. Within just 10 minutes, a shocking scene unfolded. Thomas emerged from the house carrying Nikolas on his shoulder, his brother completely unconscious. Thomas told Helena to stay at home to look after the young children and asked his friends to drive quickly to the hospital to save Nikolas. Luckily, the hospital was nearby, and they arrived in under 10 minutes. As soon as they entered the emergency room, doctors rushed to examine Nikolas. Their reaction was immediate. Nikolas had already passed away before arriving at the hospital. During their examination, the doctors noticed traces of vomit on his trousers, while his shirt was completely clean. His face smelled of soap, as if it had been washed recently. Given how close the house was to the hospital, these fresh traces were still evident. The most suspicious detail? Death did not appear natural at all, a crime or natural death. Given the strange circumstances, the doctors called the police, who arrived quickly and began their investigation. While inspecting the body, the officers noticed faint markings on Nikolas's neck, but what truly raised their suspicions was a thin thread wrapped around his throat. The police immediately suspected foul play. They asked Thomas to stay behind for questioning, while Nikolas's body was transferred to forensic examination. Investigation begins. When questioned, Thomas stated that he had been at the cafe with his friends when Helena called, telling him that Nikolas was very ill. He insisted that his brother had seemed completely fine earlier that day. They had spent most of the day working together, and after finishing, Nikolas had gone home, eaten dinner, and gone to bed. When Thomas was informed that forensic experts would investigate for possible foul play, his expression changed. He looked visibly shaken, as if he had been caught off guard. This reaction further increased police suspicions. The officers then began gathering information about Nikolas' personal life and relationships, particularly his marriage to Helena. Though Nikolas was known to be a hardworking and responsible man, some neighbors mentioned growing tensions between him and his wife. Autopsy report, a shocking twist. When the forensic report finally arrived, the truth started to emerge. Nikolas had ingested a large amount of poison hidden in a piece of cake. However, the shocking revelation was that poison was not the cause of death. Nikolas had been strangled to death. The forensic team found that a piece of fabric had been tightly wrapped around his neck and pulled from both sides, likely in an attempt to reduce visible marks on his skin. This confirmed beyond doubt that Nikolas had been murdered. Suspicious camera footage. Police then reviewed security camera footage from around the house. The footage revealed something alarming. Helena had purchased a cake from a nearby bakery earlier that afternoon, hours before Nikolas came home from work at 6:01 p.m. However, the most crucial detail was this. The cameras showed Thomas arriving at the house at 5:00 p.m., then leaving at 5:15 p.m. and heading straight to the cafe, where he remained until receiving Helena's call. This behavior was highly unusual for Thomas. The officers decided it was time to interrogate Helena more aggressively, an unexpected confession. As part of the investigation, police searched Helena's phone, and what they found was even more shocking. There were suspicious messages exchanged between Helena and Thomas. The content of these messages indicated that their relationship was far from innocent. To extract a confession, the police decided to play a psychological trick on Helena. They told her, "Thomas has already confessed to everything." Hearing these words, Helena's face turned pale. She seemed completely shocked, then suddenly blurted out, "I didn't kill him. Only put the poison in his food. But the one who strangled him was his brother." The ultimate betrayal. This was the ultimate betrayal. Not only had Helena poisoned her husband, but the actual killer was his own brother Thomas. Helena revealed the entire plot. Thomas himself had brought her the poison that day at exactly 5:01 p.m. The plan was to kill Nikolas with poison alone, but when she realized it was taking too long, she panicked and called Thomas, telling him that Nikolas was still alive. Thomas rushed back to the house and entered his brother's bedroom, where he strangled him to death using a piece of cloth. Meanwhile, Helena stayed in another room, pretending to care for the children. Fitting in, both Helena and Thomas were arrested. Although Thomas initially denied everything, the overwhelming evidence against him left no room for doubt. Following an extensive investigation, the court found them both guilty of premeditated murder. Their sentence, death penalty, was a tragic ending, but a well-deserved one. Nikolas had done nothing wrong. His only crime was trusting the wrong people, his own brother and his own wife.